how do you get your license? Well, first of all, you've got to have a license to transmit on one of these little radios with this radio. This radio has what we call the 2-meter band, the 70-centimeter band. It has the 220 band. It also has 6-meter FM on it. So it's really quite a lot of options as to what you can do. And you can scan through. Sometimes I listen to aircraft on this amateur radio. And with the right antenna and the right conditions, I could even talk to the International Space Station. That's right, satellites in the International Space Station are something that you can take advantage of with your ham radio license. So how do you get your license? Well, first of all, there are 3 levels. Let's find out what those are. This is KJ4FCZ. I'm just curious if someone would like to tell our viewers here what the 3 license classes are for amateur radio.
KA6UHV here, Paul, and the 3 licenses, we have the technician license, we have the general license, and we have the extra class license. There's 3 different class of licenses. None of them which now you need Morse code, so it's not required for any 3 of the licenses. But each license requires, the beginner is the technician. You start out with that and get yourself on the radio, and you can go up to a general where you can work in on the HF band. And when you learn the general class, or the extra class license, it reaches you farther in different parts of the band on HF, gives you different classifications so that you can do even more. So those are the 3, extra and general and technician.
So only three classes, 3 elements as they're called, elements 2, 3, and 4. Thank you for that, Paul. And just a moment, I'll come back here to Rhonda, and we'll have a question for you. The great thing, as he mentioned, is there's no code needed anymore. You don't need any Morse code to get your amateur radio license, and that's a wonderful thing. So just learn the questions from the question pool, and you'll be ready to go with your amateur radio license. You'll be ready for an exam. So how else are we going to do this with getting our license? Well, you're going to go for your technician license first. You cannot get the other 2 elements if you don't have the first ones. To get your general license, you need to have technician, and to get your extra, you need to have general. Now, you can sit for multiple licenses at the same time. If you're really ambitious and you want to do that, you could pass your technician class exam, and at the same exam session, sit for your general and pass that as well. So if you're really ambitious and you want to do 2 for 1, then go right ahead and pursue that, and that'll work for you. Otherwise, just study the technician class book and go from there. Now, Adventist Community Services, in their national convention in Orlando next year, in late March, early April of 2010, on that Sunday they will be hosting a training course for both technician and general. Now, you can only sit for one of the training courses because they're happening at the same time of each other. But you can get your book, study in advance, and then come and do basically a group study session with others. We don't recommend you coming unprepared to those sessions just because there's a fair amount of material. It might be a lot to digest in the 6 or 7 hours that we have in the class there. About 4 days later, we will then have an exam session, and that exam, you will be able to sit and take your license or take your exam and get what we call the CSCE. That's the Certificate of Successful Completion of Examination. And that's what you'll have until your license, your paper license, comes in the mail. And you see your license in the ULS database online. That's a database the FCC maintains that lists all licenses and call signs of the radio services, including amateur radio. So that's what you're going to want to do to get your license. If you're not going to be at that convention and you're pursuing it locally, then get a hold of your local ham club or go to ARRL, that's ARRL.net, and you can also go to W5YI.org. and actually I think it's ARRL.org as well. Go to either of those websites, look up classes. You can find classes in your local area, and you can find examination sessions in your local area. So feel free to take advantage of those resources in order to get your license and get on the air. Well, let's find out about who does the testing in these examinations. I'm going to come closer to the camera once more so you can hear this. AC4VF, this is KJ4FCZ. Rhonda, would you mind telling us who a volunteer examiner is, a VE, and who does the testing at a examination for an amateur radio license? Over.
For FCZ, this is AC4VF. A VE is someone who has a license with a licensing organization, a ham license, who has taken a test and is accredited to give examination. During the testing, there needs to be at least 3 VE testers to administer the examination. And usually one of those 3 is a voluntary examiner coordinator who works with the licensing organization to coordinate the testing materials and testing in the local area, and obtains all the appropriate materials and returns the test to the organization, or if done by computer overseas on this is AC4VF.
Thank you for that, AC4VF, and this is KJ4FCZ. I'll be standing by. So volunteer examiners are an important part of getting your license because they're the ones who are going to be testing you at the testing location. And as you heard there, volunteer examiners are accredited by a volunteer examiner coordinator. And that's important to know because it's one of the questions from your question pool. And there are always 3 of them, and in order to get your technician license, they need to all have a general class license or higher. So as long as they have a general class license and they're accredited by a VEC, then they're qualified to test you and issue you an examination so you can get your amateur radio license. We got a little interrupted there by the station identification, so I thought I would clarify that in case you lost any of it. Well, as you can see, it's not that difficult. We'll show you in the next video what materials you can use to study, how to find out what the questions in the question pool are. The test is only 35 questions long, and all the questions are dictated in advance, the entire question pool. So if you read through the question pool, then you have nothing to worry about. All of the questions have to be taken from that question pool. Ham radio is a lot of fun, and it's a great, useful hobby. And there's been a lot of celebrity hams over the years, and there's great stories of people hearing them on the ham radio. As you'll hear from one of the Sarasota hams recently, Walter Cronkite, the late Walter Cronkite, who just passed away. He was a ham radio operator and made some contacts around the world. And just today, in today's video, we've covered, I think, at least 6 questions from the question pool. What are the 3 licenses? Technician, general, and extra. Who is a VE? Someone authorized to administer examinations by a volunteer examiner coordinator accredited by a VEC. These are the kinds of questions. And there are some more technical questions that use some very basic math, and we'll go through those later. So I look forward to seeing you here again, and hope you tune in to the series of these videos, and that you get your amateur radio license, and hope to hear you on the air soon. This is KJ4FCZ.